Hello, everyone. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Well, welcome to this session. The session will be held in English. Thank you, Sonia Gandhi, for being with us today. So for the benefit of Sonia, I'll be doing this introduction in English. Thank you very much to all for joining us today in this session. I just for the few of you that might not be fully aware of what CFA Society Portugal is, I just would like to ask you to bear with me one or 2 minutes, so I can just briefly introduce you the reason why we are doing this ethics workshop. Well, first of all, my name is Marcos Ribeiro. I'm the president of CFA Society in Portugal. This society is comprised of 160 members with a CFA certification and that work in the financial sector. So the CFA certification is awarded by the CFA Institute, an international organization, which basically our vision is that is to build a more equitable financial markets that can work freely and efficiently, for the ultimate benefit of the investor, and that requires that certain conditions must be present, and one of them is a high ethical principles and standards to be in place by everyone that participates in this market. And we, as a financial chartered financial analysts, we want to be on the forefront of that effort. To earn our certification, apart from having to study more than 900 hours and to successfully be approved in these very difficult exams, we have to study some ethical issues thoroughly. And so this is why we think that ethics is part of our way of performing our profession in the financial sector. Well, we believe in educated and ethical investment professionals, which, coupled with financial markets that really reflects these beliefs of the CFA Institute, will be building a global financial markets that's best serves the public interest. That's our vision. As you say, the society in Portugal now is fully implemented. We are a very active society, and providing and we want to have a role in society apart from developing our own members. We want to have a strong role especially in the Portuguese society, and for that we want to promote very important and distinctive aspects such as the ethics in financial markets. That is why this is the first workshop that we are offering and undertaking here in Portugal, and we invited Sonia Gandhi, which is our specialist in ethics from the CFA Institute, and it's a huge pleasure to have you with us, Sonia. And in this first event, we really count on you to sparkle this this ethics quest here in Portugal. That after and that we surely after that will be introducing several other activities to develop and to attain our vision. Sonia, the floor is yours, and once again, thank you very much for joining us and to be with us today.
Thank you, Marcos. So I'm going to share my screen, and Pedro, will you please confirm?
Marcos,
you can see the screen, please confirm.
Yes,
not yet. Yeah. Marcos, can you close your? Yeah, exactly. Okay, sorry.
Yeah?
Go on.
Can you see that now?
Yes, it's working.
Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, for joining us for this session. This is meant to be an engaging session, and I'm going to be using an online polling. So if I can request all of you to take out your smartphones, tablets, whatever you have, and go to www.sli.do. And the passcode for today's session is trust. If we can all do that, that would be really nice, because we'll put up some small cases and we can vote on that, and we'll make it engaging and participative. If you have any problem logging in, please let me know. Is everyone able to log in?
Yes, I'm in.
Okay.
Fairly easy.
Okay, thank you. So I want to start today's session by talking about the findings of Industry Trust Survey. These surveys, we'll all agree, when someone gives their money to someone else to manage, it's a very big decision that they make. So the objective of these surveys is to find out how are investors doing, what do they think about us as an industry. As you can see, trust is not given uniformly everywhere. Especially in Europe, in our region, trust levels are very low. Germany, very low levels, 28%. UK, where I work, 33%. Australia, again, it's gone down very low after the Royal Commission report. Also, let's look at these findings with relative rankings. After the last financial crisis, which took place over a decade ago, trust in our industry hit rock bottom. But since then, it's gradually been going up. But we can see we still have a very long way to go. We are behind many other industries as far as trust levels go. Let me show you some covers of Fortune magazine, which sync very well with the slides that we saw just now. This is the cover of the Fortune magazine after the last financial crisis. And these are the CEOs of the 4 largest investment banks in the world. And the question being asked is, what were they smoking? We know that the previous financial crisis before this crisis was the dot-com bubble. This is the cover of the Fortune magazine from there. Can we ever trust Wall Street again? And these covers are telling us very powerful stories. And then when we look at it in the context of the findings of the Industry Trust Survey, it gives all of us something to think about, all of us who work in this industry. Because at the core of our industry is the concept of stewardship, the careful and responsible management of money entrusted to our care. Stewardship is basically putting client interest first. It boils down to trust, really taking care of our client's interest. So what do the question arises that we know there is a problem. The industry does not, investors do not trust, our clients do not trust us enough. And why is it a problem? It's a problem because the very core of our industry is the concept of stewardship, trust. So what should we do about it? I find that very often in life, it helps to go back to the very basics. And I put it down in the form of 3 simple questions we can ask ourselves whenever we come across an ethical dilemma. is this legal? Because if the response to question number 1 is yes, it violates the law, we stop there. We should not be going any further. But in today's session, I want to say that we should not stop at asking ourselves the first question. Even if the response to question number 1 is no, it does not violate the law, we still need to ask ourselves 2 more questions. Even if it is legal, is it ethical? Is it honest? And is it fair? How would I feel if I were in my client's shoes? What do my actions look like from my client's perspective? So today's session is a lot about asking question number 2 and question number 3. Because if you look at the history of financial market bubbles, tulip speculation is the first recorded bubble in the history of financial markets. For some reason, in 17th century Holland, Dutch people were very excited about these flowers, tulip flowers. They were buying tulips, they were buying tulip fields. And when things got out of control, some enterprising people started saying, okay, we'll deliver tulips at a future date, knowing fully well when the time came, they will not be able to do it. But they took the investors' money and they never delivered on their promise. And if you look at their behavior, it's not really illegal, but definitely it was unethical. And if you look at the history of financial market bubbles, the same behavior is, we see the same behavior taking place over and over again. The actions of participants in this industry very often do not cross the legal line boundaries, but they cross the boundaries of ethics. So today, we will focus on asking ourselves, even if something is allowed by the law, should I still be doing it? Is it still fair to my clients? This is one of the best definitions of ethical behavior that I have seen. It is doing the right thing when no one else is watching, even when doing the wrong thing is legal. It's really about asking those questions. Even if it is legal, should I still be doing it? This is our first polling question for today. So if everybody is, what I'll do is if some people join late, I want to show you the first slide. Please go to www.sli.do and put hashtag trust for today's session. And now I will open the first polling question. I want you to think about what has more influence on whether a person will engage in unethical conduct. Is it our disposition, our moral character, or is it outside circumstances that determine whether we engage in unethical conduct? Disposition versus situations. So just vote about it. Let me see how we think about this question. Some votes are coming in. I would encourage everyone to vote so that this session becomes more fun. Okay, let's look at the responses. Wow, 88% people think it's outside circumstances and 13% think it's a person's moral character. Those are interesting findings. I'm going to park this here and I'll talk to you about an experiment that took place in the early 70s. Many of you may have heard the name of Professor Philip Zimbardo. He's a well-known psychologist and he was a professor at Stanford University. And he was thinking about the same question very seriously. So he took a bunch of students from Stanford University and he thought he'll do an experiment. So he divided them into 2 categories, prisoners and guards. Then a makeshift prison was created in the basement of Stanford University. The idea was it must look like real life as far as possible. So there were dingy, narrow corridors like in a prison. The cells of the prisoners were tiny with paint peeling off. Even the uniforms that were issued keeping in mind that it must replicate real life. So the guards, they got very smart, well-fitting uniforms. The prisoners got loose, ill-fitting robes. And they were all given these uniforms and they were put in that prison. And now Professor Zimbardo is observing everyone's behavior. Much to his surprise, most people adapted to their assigned roles, far exceeding Professor Zimbardo's expectations. So the guards in their smart uniforms, with that newfound sense of power, they started abusing, bullying, harassing, torturing the inmates. Who were these inmates? Many of the inmates were their friends. And the prisoners in that depressing environment, many of them started accepting this behavior in a very docile manner. Some prisoners even had a mental breakdown. An experiment which was meant to last for 2 weeks had to be abandoned in 6 days because behaviors were going all over the place. So the findings of this experiment tell us that situational influences have more to do with a person's ethical behavior than a person's character. Under the right conditions, or for that matter, wrong conditions like the Stanford prison experiment, good people like us can be induced, seduced, and initiated to act unethically. And in today's session, we'll look at some of those situations. What are some of those situational influences? Before I talk about situational influences, I'm going to put up the first case. So today we'll do 2 or 3 real life cases, the kind of dilemmas that people in investment industry face, and we'll see how we think about them. So you are a fixed income portfolio manager who works as part of a team that invests the assets of large institutional clients. The members of your team tell you in confidence that they plan to resign from the firm to start their own firm. They invite you to join them, but you decline. You know that their actions will at least temporarily affect the performance of your clients' portfolios. So these are the facts. You work as part of part of a team. You manage money for your clients. Some of your colleagues, not one, not two, a few of them come and tell you that they are starting their own firm. Nothing wrong with that. They make you an offer to join them, which you decline. You are aware that when they leave, because there are so many of them leaving together, the client portfolios will be negatively impacted. However, you decide to do nothing about it. Your actions are okay because you are respecting the confidentiality of your colleagues. Probably okay because turnover is a commonplace occurrence in our industry. Probably not okay because client performances will be affected when they leave. Or you think it's not okay for some other reason. Give it a bit of thought. I'll open the voting and let's see how we think about this case. Okay, we've got a few votes come in. Okay, let's see. So if you are able to see the results, most of you have said probably not okay because client performances will be affected. Quite a few of you feel not okay for some other reason, and we can discuss that. Some people feel you are respecting the confidentiality of your colleagues, and some of you feel probably okay because personnel turnover is a commonplace occurrence. Let's hear from someone why they chose what they chose, how are they thinking about this case, and I encourage you to unmute yourself. If you feel comfortable, you can put your video on and just talk about why you chose what you chose. Any volunteers?
Hello, Sonia.
Yes, hi, Miguel.
It's Miguel. Well, I went for B because personnel turnover, it's expected and it's the firm's responsibility. As long as they're just leaving, the firm has to have plans in place for this. If it is going to be affected, well, the firm should again have planned for this, because personnel leaving can happen at any time. So I don't see that it would be correct from this person to go and tell the superiors if this fact was told in confidentiality, which I expect it was.
Fair point. Very, very, very fair point. Thank you for that. Any other view? We heard from Miguel that firms should have policies in place and they confided in him. So why, if they confide in you, how can you talk about it? Any other views on this? Many people chose because client performances will be affected. How do we think? Marcos, can I ask upon you to say something, to express what you chose, or Pedro?
I can reply. I put a D, not okay, because I think the point here is the company, the clients, the performance of the clients will be affected by decisions of the staff of the company. That it's not fair for the clients, and the point here it's, I'm not pretty sure, but the company maybe doesn't have a contingency plan for act on these cases. Obviously, the staff can change and go to other company. It's fair for them, but should be fair as well for the clients. The clients can be affected by decisions of personal decisions of the staffs of one company. That's not fair. So for me, it's a D.
Okay, fair enough. That's a good argument.
Okay.
Any other thoughts?
I can just add a little point on that. I voted for C, in fact, and I think that's the root of the problem. Although there are some more a lot of impacts because of that, but you have confidential information that your clients will be affected. Your firm is responsible for that, for the reasons Pedro was saying that, but your firm is responsible for that, and you have time to act at this point, to do something about it before your clients have incurring a loss.
Okay, thank you for that, Marcos.
Sonia, sorry, can I add just and kind of reply to Marcos, or
sure, absolutely, feel free. Yes.
Meaning, it's a conviction of the person. He's convinced that the performance is affected. We're not told for fact that it will be. And to this point, if he's convinced of that, right? I don't know. We're only told that the other guys are leaving, not being told that they are doing anything wrong on purpose because they're leaving. Just they are leaving, which is their right to do. I think unless we have other details pointing to wrongdoing by the guys who are leaving, the full responsibility goes into the firm.
Okay, fair point. So thank you everyone for your comments. That really helps us to hear different perspectives. The point we are trying to make with this very simple cases, and this is a real life condition many of us are likely to face. I know a colleague of mine actually faced this and we wrote a case out of it. So I take the point, they have, many of our colleagues become our friends. You know, we spend so many hours at work and they have confided in us. So, you know, can we go and break their trust by talking about this? And I'll talk about the ethical decision-making framework developed by CFA Institute later on. In such a situation, very often I find it helps to take a step back and think about who we owe our duty to. And in this case, when it's obvious, when the case tells us that client portfolios will be impacted, we know that we owe our duty to our client. And we saw the first 4 slides told us how the concept of stewardship is so important. And as an industry, probably we are not doing a very good job of maintaining our clients' trust. And Miguel raised a very good point that, you know, companies should have policies and procedures in place. But you would be surprised how many places, I mean, I've done these trainings all over the globe, and I've done it for corporates as well. And how many times I've stood in front of a bunch of people from a company, from a bank, and there are HR and compliance people, and there are not very strong policies and procedures in place. Even if they are in place, a bunch of people, so many people living together, sometimes can cause a lot of distress. So the point we are trying to make is maybe just being a passive bystander is not an option in this case, knowing that we owe a duty to our clients. However, sometimes, and this in one of the sessions, somebody said, they said, maybe not talk to my manager about it. I would have a conversation with my colleagues. Sometimes people don't even realize the impact of their actions. My first step would be to talk to them and tell them to do it the right way so that we can protect our client portfolios. And even if they don't bother then I'll have to take some steps. So very simple case, it shows the kind of nuances that go on in real life. Yeah. Okay, so the key point, yes, Miguel, were you trying to say something?
Yeah, I was just sorry, just to insist on this. I think that accepting the inversion of responsibilities just because firms and entities, they do not perform their duties regarding having transition plans, and accepting the inversion of responsibilities into the individual is a very dangerous way to go. I think as individuals, we should not accept that. In this case, probably the employee should go to the firm and say, look, you should, if you're not having so by now, you should have transition plans in place, just that. And
Fair
not
enough.
really accepting responsibility onto the individual. That's dangerous.
Fair enough. Companies should have robust plans in place. Through these trainings, we are also trying to tell people that procedures, plans and procedures go so far, but as individuals, we have certain responsibilities and duties we owe to our clients. Fair points all, but just to raise awareness that we do owe a duty to our clients. So the point we try to make is we often make unethical decisions, not because we are bad people, but because all these biases, factors, and situational influences can affect our decision making. They lead to weaknesses in how we process information and make decisions, which can lead to unethical behavior. Okay, let me ask you a fun question now. Which do you think is more practical, more doable, being ethical 98% of the time or being ethical 100% of the time? What I'm asking you is, when you know what the right thing to do is it more practical to do it most of the time or to do it all of the time? It's just a fun question, vote the way you like. And okay. Let's see how people are voting. 86% is 100%, and okay, the thing is changing. So many a times I hear people say, you know, keep some buffer. That 2% buffer is good to have. It's like cheating on your diet at Christmas time, perhaps. And many people say who choose 100%, they say when you do what the right thing to do is, it's just good to keep it simple. Just do the right thing instead of, you know, thinking I do it now. And, you know, and the reason I put this fun question is to introduce a very important concept, which is the concept of incrementalism, the slippery slope. They say that the first dishonest act is the most important one to prevent. It is easier to be ethical 100% of the time than 98%, because that 2% leeway we kept, when we told ourselves just this time, it can become 3%, 5%, 10%, and so on. So you know that quarter end is coming. You haven't met your revenue targets. Okay, let me recommend this product to my client, which I know is not in her best interest, but it will help me, it will give me the commission. It may help me fulfill my revenue target. Next quarter comes, I'm a very ethical individual. I will not repeat this behavior. Trust me, next quarter comes, it will be so much easier for us to repeat that behavior, not only for that one client, but maybe for many other clients as well. The classic slippery slope. Bernie Madoff, the biggest Ponzi scheme in the world, serving a 140-year prison term. Not to justify his behavior, but I like this quote, what he said. He said it began with adjusting returns for weak performance in one quarter, with plans to correct it in the following quarter. However, performance did not improve, escalating the manipulation. So I just wanted to introduce this concept of slippery slope. What are some of the other situational influences? Obedience to authority. We are far more likely to indulge in unethical behavior when our superiors tell us to do. And our bosses are very smart. They will rarely ask us to do anything unethical in a very straightforward way. It will probably be couched in terms of assets under management or our performance metrics at the end of the year, which makes it a little difficult for us to understand what's going on. How do we justify our behavior? We were only following boss's order, what to do. Conformity with others. We often take our cues about the proper way to act from our colleagues, from our friends in the industry. We feel that if everyone else is doing it, it must be okay. Incrementalism, we already spoke about it. Overconfidence in our own ability to act appropriately. We all feel that we are more ethical, we are more sorted, we are more sensible than others. And that leads us to take actions without indulging in adequate thinking, adequate dialogue, debate, and we end up doing something wrong. And when I look at my career in the investment banking industry, I think all four of these influences have played their part. And I would encourage you after this session to think about these situational influences, how they have, played a part in your career at different stages of your career. I'm sure some or the other of these, all of us have experienced. So the goals today are very simple: to encourage us to become more conscious of our thought and behavior, so that we are more likely to notice and act upon ethical issues before they become a problem. To recognize that ethical dilemmas are a normal part, as we'll see in all the 3 cases that we do today. They are a normal part of everyday life. We saw in the last case as well, and we will discuss some approaches to deal with them. Time for our next case. You are a portfolio manager in the international sector who travels to a foreign country to investigate investment opportunities for your clients. The management of a large company that you visit and a potentially attractive investment opportunity gives you a very expensive gift. Refusing the gift would be considered an insult in this country and harm the good relations that you have developed with the company's management. So you are a portfolio manager, you are looking for investment opportunities for your clients. You visit a foreign country and there's a very attractive investment opportunity for your client. And however, the management of this company makes you offers you a very expensive gift. The point is that refusing the gift is considered an insult in that country. They are your host, they are offering you something, it's seen as an insult, and it might harm the good relations that you have developed. Accepting the gift is okay because refusal would jeopardize an investment opportunity for your clients. Probably okay if you give the gift to charity. Probably not okay unless you tell your supervisor that you accepted the gift. Or you think that accepting an expensive gift is not okay under any circumstance. So I'm going to open the poll and let's see how we think about this. Okay. Supervisor. Most people think it's not okay unless you tell your supervisor. Charity is an interesting one. Some people feel it's not okay at all. Okay. Let's start with charity. I like that choice. Probably okay if you give the gift to charity. What's happening here? How does it help to give the gift to charity?
Well,
I have a question.
Yes,
Yes, I have a question. So, from your point of view, if the portfolio manager gives the gift to charity, do you think that it completely erases the obligation, or at least the biased judgment that the portfolio management would have by accepting the gift in the first place?
Very good point. So you have hit at the heart of the ethical dilemma in this case.
At least for me, from the outside looking in, I would have said that, all right, if the portfolio manager gives the gift to charity, well, he would be completely able to make an unbiased judgment of this investment opportunity. But I'm not sure, if I was in his shoes, whether I should consider that whether that action in extremely good faith would actually bias my judgment. Do you understand what I mean?
Choose? I'm interested in knowing what was your choice.
Well, I from the outside looking in, I think if I give the gift to charity, I guess I would be able to make a completely unbiased judgment. But
okay,
until I am in the shoes of the portfolio manager, I cannot be certain of that.
Okay, very good point. Thank you for that. Any other views? We heard some very good views from Marco. Any other views?
Yes, I have a question. Isn't there an option to give the gift to the firm? So I can give it to my employer. Imagine I receive a watch, expensive watch, or a painting. I could give it to the firm, and the firm could show the watch or show the painting in the office.
Yeah, that's you will probably never find very perfect answers here, but I think what you are coming to is disclose and give it to the firm, right? Because that's a good point. Yes, that's a good point. So the point we are really trying to make here is that your independence and objectivity may get compromised, or may be seen to be getting compromised when you accept a very expensive gift. Okay, so that is the first step is to recognize the ethical issue here. So what do you do?
Can I just ask you something?
Absolutely.
My key point here is being seen as keeping your independence and your judgment independent, but being seen by whom? I think there are three stakeholders here: is the investee company, it's your own employer, but there are also at most your investors, your clients who are investing. Probably they, I don't know even if they know about this, they will ever know about this of this gift in any circumstances. But that is something interesting to think about. It. How can you remain unbiased through their eyes of your client?
Yeah, good point. So that's a little bit of counter to what Marco said, and Miguel raised an interesting point as well. So I'll try and sum up what everyone has said, and let's see where we arrive. So the point is, like we said, even if it does not impact your unbiased opinion, it might seem to be, you know, and things get out, like Marco said, they might never know, but they might know as well. If something goes wrong, it's funny how the can of worm opens and everything is out there. So the point is, I would say in an ideal world, the best option is not to accept an expensive gift, but that's in an ideal world. We live in a real world which is rife with conflicts of interest and ethical dilemmas. And today's session is all about learning to deal with those ethical dilemmas. If it is a very interesting investment opportunity, you know it will be seen as an insult. You don't want to deprive your client of that investment opportunity either. Then maybe you take that gift, you accept that gift, but there are ways to deal with it. Disclosure is a very good way to deal with it. You disclose it to your supervisor, maybe make that disclosure to your client as well. What does disclosure do? Disclosure gives your client, your employer, and heavens forbid, if things were to go haywire, it gives the regulator an opportunity to assess your impartiality, your independence and objectivity. Now, to Miguel's point, in many firms have this policy that no one person should be keeping that gift. So it does not benefit one person. So they will accept, they will take that, it has been disclosed, it will go to a common company pool, and either, to Marco's point, either the firm will give it to charity, or, you know, Christmas time, you go out for a nice meal, the whole firm. So the point is, no one person should benefit from that. So that way they try to take away the fact that somebody makes a biased investment decision. Does that make sense? I think it kind of takes everybody's points in.
I have a question.
Yes.
All right. So my understanding is that, all right, if we were in the CFA examination, I'm sure that the right answer would be C. But from my understanding, if we accept a gift and we disclose either to our supervisor that we accepted the gift, and if we also disclose that we in our research report that we received the gift, I guess the whole objective of all this is to pass on the decision of of whether my judgment is biased or not to the client. Is that true? Or what I mean is, it's not up to me to decide whether my judgment is biased or unbiased. No, that's not up to me to make that judgment. I will let the client to decide whether my judgment is biased or not. Is that true?
No, so that's a good point. I'm glad you're raising this point. The fact is, so why don't I come to that slide on fundamental ethical principles? I want to bring up this slide now to answer your point. The point is, these are the fundamental ethical principles, which are the building blocks of CFA Institute code and standards. And these principles, if you look at point number 8, clearly tells you, you have to exercise your diligence. Diligence is what it means in the English language. You put in your work, you go through the balance sheet, income statement, talk to creditors, buyers, suppliers, bankers, whoever, and then you arrive at an informed course of action. So you are doing your work with diligence. You should not let your bias come in. After having exercised your diligence, if you still feel it is a good investment opportunity, you put your client's money, having nothing to do with receiving that gift. And the point is, you are not even benefiting from that gift. The gift was given and you have disclosed it. The point about mentioning it is, even if you put in your diligence and you do this, you make this investment, in real life, things have a way of going haywire. Supposing something wrong happens and this investment does not work out as you expected, it goes down the drain. At least you are protected in this situation because your employer knows and the client knows. If you have, revealed it in that research report, everyone knows that this gift was made. It's not that you were hiding it. If you had not disclosed it, you might find yourself in a lot of trouble if the investment, despite your diligence, if the investment did not work out well, you are going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. Does that make sense? You are not passing on responsibility. You are ensuring that, everyone is aware of what happened. You are putting in your work and doing that. Does that make sense to you? Yeah?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's look at, so what I really wanted to first say is, our institute, CFA Institute Code and Standards, they provide useful guidelines to professionals like yourself to handle these ethical dilemmas. How do they do that? Through, these are the building blocks of code and standards. I put some 9 fundamental ethical principles here. Client interest comes first. We've talked a lot about it already. Independence and objectivity, we already addressed it in the last case. Our work, our investments for our clients should be free of any biases. Conflicts of interest, real life is full of conflicts of interest. Full and fair disclosure. We saw in the last case, disclosure is one of the ways of dealing with this. CFA Institute Code and Standards also tell us that we must make full and fair disclosure of our investment methodology, any changes to our investment methodology, the risk factors, the shortcomings of our methodology. We must distinguish facts from opinions. Prohibition against using material non-public information, that is insider trading, because it compromises the integrity of capital markets. Confidentiality, maintaining the confidentiality of our client data. So fair dealing, dealing with all our clients fairly, not discriminating between our clients. Diligence, we talked about it. Reasonable care and prudent judgment, really my favorite one here. Care means causing no harm to our clients. Prudence means acting with caution, acting with discretion, acting with care, acting with, basically what I'm trying to say is if you follow the first 8 fundamental ethical principles, you will end up acting with care and prudent judgment. If you're putting your client interest first, if you're acting with independence and objectivity, you will ensure that you are causing no harm to your clients. Yeah. So now that we have looked at these fundamental ethical principles, I like to put this slide next to this. These are the headlines of the Wall Street Journal the day after Lehman filed for bankruptcy. And if you look at what happened in the last financial crisis, when mortgages of suspect quality, they were being bundled together like in mortgage-backed securities. And these highly risky securities were getting stellar ratings, top ratings from credit rating agencies. And these highly toxic, highly volatile, highly risky securities were being bought for client account by investment advisors and managers. Many of these clients were planning for their retirement. I feel all these ethical principles were flouted with impunity. People were not really thinking of causing no harm to their clients. Having established this, I would like us to exercise our ethical muscle on this case. You are a securities analyst at an investment fund. One day you have lunch with a friend who's executive assistant to president of microtechnology. During lunch, your friend tells you that she has been working late because her boss has been meeting with the president of Pambex Systems. Pambex and microtechnology are 2 firms in the same industry. After returning to your office, you learn that Pambex is rumored to be a takeover target. So you purchase shares of the company for your personal portfolio. Later in the day, you tell your boss about the conversation that you had with your friend. Your boss observes that there has been heavy buying of Pambex shares, so he purchases shares of Pambex for the fund. It's a little nuanced case, so I'll give you some time to look at it. You have lunch with a friend. She is executive assistant to president of this company. And she tells you that she has been working late because her boss has been meeting with the president of another company in the same industry. After returning to your office, you learn that Pambex is rumored to be a takeover target. So you purchase some shares for your personal portfolio. Later in the day, you tell your boss about that conversation. Now your boss looks at it and he sees that there has been heavy buying in Pambex shares. So he purchases shares for his fund. Should you or your boss have purchased shares in Pambex? Both of you were okay to purchase shares. Nobody did anything wrong. It was okay for you to have purchased those shares for your personal account. It was okay for your boss to have purchased shares for the client account. Or you think neither you nor your boss should have bought shares in Pambex. Think about which fundamental ethical, there are more than one fundamental ethical principles here. There are 4 of them. So I'll give you 2 minutes. Think about it before I open the voting. Think about which is the fundamental ethical principle. Think about who you owe a duty to, who your boss owes a duty to. Are there any conflicts of interest? There is a lot going on in this case. Okay, let's look at the results. Wow, neither you nor your boss should have purchased shares in Pampex. Okay, let's start the discussion from there. Why shouldn't you or your boss have purchased shares in Pampex? What is going on here? Any thoughts?
Hello.
Hi, Raul.
Yes, I think first of all, I would like to say that it's very interesting format for this presentation. So congrats for it.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think, as you said during the question, in my opinion, I would say that there is not any fundamental reason to buy these shares. I mean, they are only buying these shares for rumors or for conversation, but there is not a fundamental analysis behind.
Okay, so Raul thinks that there is no, maybe he's saying maybe diligence is not being exercised, so it shouldn't be bought.
Yes, of course, there is not any diligence and reasonable basis to buy these shares.
Okay, so we've identified one ethical principle, diligence. What else? What else? Is there something else going on here?
In my opinion, there is no material information that they have in their possession. So I don't think it's considered to be insider information. They have they're like pieces of information that put together, they can use it to achieve an important conclusion or an important speculation, actually, that the cover is going to happen, and they act on it. But I don't think they're in possession of insider information, and so I believe that they can buy the shares.
Excellent point. Does anyone think differently from Miguel? Does anybody think there is material non-public information here? He's made a point that there is no material non-public information. Yes, Marco, you wanted to say something?
I was about to tell you that in Schwezer Key Bank, I saw a similar question in which the directors of two companies rumored to be one be taking over the other. They met privately at an airport lounge, and the question was whether the person who saw them, which was a portfolio manager or something like that, should be allowed to trade on that information. And to my surprise, I guess the answer was yes, because simply by seeing the two directors meeting each other in privately at an airport lounge is not materially enough. Is not materially enough in order for us to conclude that for certain one company will be taking over the other, and so we are allowed to trade on that information. But for me it was a surprise, because we tend to jump to conclusions. All right, if they are rumored on the media to be one taking over the other, if we see the two directors meeting each other in private, all right, so they are discussing about the takeover. We suppose so. But in fact, the solution to that question was that we actually can trade on that information because it's not materially enough.
Okay, thank you, Marco, for that anecdote, and Miguel for your analysis. Absolutely right. Both of you are, and Marco, it is, I agree with Miguel, there is no insider information here. Two people, we don't know what they were discussing in that room. They could be discussing their golf handicap for all we know. So we don't know what was being discussed in that room, and that does not make it material non-public information. So we have established that. Now, Marco, to your point, even if it is not material non-public information, should they still be dealing in it? So let's, you and your boss were, okay, so I like the point that was raised by Raul, that even if it is not material non-public information, it seems that the boss has not done his diligence. He's not really put in the work. He's doing it based on, and like Miguel said, he's putting some pieces together, which in CFA parlance is called mosaic theory. So it's not material inside information, It's mosaic theory and he's arriving at a course of action. But maybe he's not put in his diligence, he's not put in the hard work. What is the problem with you buying the shares as an analyst? Is there a problem with that? It's your personal money. Why should you be? You don't need to do much diligence for that. Is there any ethical principle here which we should be concerned about?
If it is not insider as you are talking, there is no issue.
So
I think he may be doing front running, because if he buys for his own account, then he tells the investment manager to buy a large stake. He's doing front running.
Thank you, Miguel. So in many firms, this could be seen as front running. And I know, I mean, I have worked in investment banking outfits, and when we would recommend some security to our client, for the first 30 days, we were not allowed to buy it. So the client gets the first opportunity. So this could be seen as front running. So we've established that this is not material non-public information. Even if it is not material non-public information, it seems boss has not done his diligence. It seems if the analyst buys it, he might be indulging in front running. But maybe certain firms, and I know some of my clients as portfolio managers, some of their portfolios had a small percentage earmarked for situations like this, where they could, they saw an opportunity and they were allowed to invest in that. So maybe this guy had that and he invested in that. The point we are trying to say is, supposing this merger happens as expected and the stock price of Pampex goes through the roof. And now the regulators, knowing the way regulators are nowadays, they might start looking at which funds were very active in these securities just before the merger. And this fund's name will pop up. And if you are in United States, the regulator will send you something like called a Wells notice. And the notice, in a very polite language, it says that we would request you to come to our office. We want to speak to you. And it would be a good idea for you to get your lawyer along. Now you are in trouble. You go there, the regulator is asking you all sort of questions. Why were you buying these stocks just before the merger happened and what was going on? What will help you in this case? You didn't have any inside information. What's going to help you in this case? Which goes back to the point that Ron raised. If you have done your work, if you have documented all the, that you have followed your investment methodology and you've done your work, if you put that in front of the regulator, that would come to your rescue in this case. The regulator can see that it's not really insider information. You've done your work and you acted on it. I like this case because there is so much going on over here. And even if something is like going back to the first three questions, even if on the face of it, it is not illegal, it's not MNPI, maybe just give it a little bit of thought. Should I still be doing it? And if I am doing it, do I have proper documentation in place? Have I put in the work? Am I not flouting any other ethical principle? Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, very much, Sonia.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. This is the ethical decision-making framework I spoke to you at the beginning. This has been developed by CFA Institute. It's meant to provide professionals like yourselves. It's a tool for us to evaluate ethical dilemmas. So it has 4 steps. The first starting point is recognize that there is an ethical dilemma. Once you have recognized, identify. So if you see, that's how I was guiding you through the cases. Identify which is the ethical principle involved. Is it independent? We saw in the gift case, independence and objectivity. We saw several ethical principles in the Pampex case. Who do you owe a duty to? In the first case we saw, if we take a step back, we realize that we owe a duty to our clients. Even though somebody confided in us, our primary duty was to our clients. Look at the important facts. In the gift case, we saw that we know that it's not good to accept expensive gifts, but we saw that it's seen as an insult in that culture. So there are ways and means to deal with it. See if there are any conflicts of interest. Then you consider, are there any situational influences? Are you acting under the influence of your boss? Are you acting in your own capability, in your own overconfidence and not thinking through the situation carefully? What are alternative actions? In the first case we saw, instead of going directly to our supervisor, we could have a constructive dialogue with our colleagues and guide them to do it in the right manner. Do you need any additional guidance from a mentor, from your boss or anyone? Act by making a decision. Sometimes you need to elevate it to HR, compliance. In the worst case scenario, when there is something illegal going on, you might need to report it to the regulator. Reflect on what you have learned and your strengths and weaknesses. Did you identify all the ethical principles properly? Did you think about all the important facts so that next time when you are confronted with a situation, you are better equipped to deal with those situations? These are some of the rationalizations we use to justify our behavior. Everybody else does it, so it must be okay. That's the way they do it at firm X. If we do not do it, someone else will. It's not a big deal. It's not my responsibility. If next time you find yourself justifying your behavior by saying one of these sentences, just think back to today's session and take a step back and think about what you are going to do. Just that 2 minutes of reflection will help you. Run this by the legal department, but run super fast so that ethics department doesn't see it, the classic tussle between ethics and legal. To conclude, what I want to do is I want to talk to you about a real life example. I want to put everything that we discussed in the last 1 hour in the context of a very important case that happened recently. The gentleman you see on your screens, his name is Tom Hayes. He was a very smart trader. He was recruited by UBS for their Tokyo desk in 2006. Very dynamic trader, very hardworking, very smart. And very soon, he made a name for himself as the smartest trader on the street in Tokyo. Tom had this very nice system of manipulating LIBOR. He had contacts with brokers and dealers in large financial institutions all over the globe who were helping him manipulate LIBOR. We all know that trillions of dollars worth of transactions throughout the world are a reference to LIBOR. So if you know in which direction LIBOR is going to go, you have a very strong edge, a very significant edge. When the last financial crisis hit, Mr. Tom Hayes' system was working very well. He was making millions and millions of dollars in profit for the bank. And as a result, he was making millions of dollars in annual bonus for himself. However, after the last financial crisis, regulators were looking at LIBOR. When they started their investigation, it led them to Tom Hayes. That year, Citibank had paid $3 million sign-on bonus and poached him from UBS. However, once the investigations intensified, Citibank promptly let go of him. He got an 11-year prison term. He's behind bars, away from his young child and wife, and probably he'll never be allowed to work in the finance industry again. This is one part of the story. The part of the story that brings everything we discussed together today in the last 1 hour is what he said in the court. He told the judge, manipulating LIBOR was seen as common industry practice. Everyone else was doing it. Who was I to question? Remember that slide on, and I'm going to take you back to the slides on situational influences. Conformity with others. He also told the judge, he said, my bosses were aware of my methods. In fact, they were continuously pushing me to try harder to make more money for the bank. Obedience to authority. The cover, the slide that I showed you, the cover said Spider's Network. This is the name of the book which is written on his life and about LIBOR scandal. When I read that book, it struck me that Mr. Hayes did not get up one fine day and started indulging in unethical behavior. It was classic slippery slope incrementalism. He fixed one trade one day, it became profitable. It emboldened him, it enhanced his confidence, he became overconfident, his managing LIBOR became bigger and bigger, and his trades became bigger and bigger. And I found it very interesting how all the 4 situational influences came together and resulted in something which had pretty bad outcome for such a young and smart trader. And I want to leave this thought with you, food for thought, that it can happen to any of us. Any of us can succumb to any of those situational influences and maybe end up in behavior which might lead to, I'm not saying the consequences could be so severe, but it could lead to bad consequences for us, for our clients, for our employers. And I really want to end today's session with this last slide about this lovely quote from Warren Buffett. After they obey all rules, I want my employees to ask themselves whether they are willing to have any contemplated act appear the next day on the front page of their local paper to be read by their spouses, children, and friends, with the reporting done by an informed and critical reporter. I want to think of, in this digital age, think of a YouTube video of your actions going viral, to be watched by your family, friends, spouse, kids, bosses. And if that makes you uncomfortable, you must pause and maybe reflect on some of the learnings from today's session. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I hope everyone found this session useful.
Very, very, Sonia. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was a great way to start thinking and introducing this issue.
Yeah, and there is so much more to think about. I mean, in a 1-hour session, one can only do this much, but this is a good starting point.
Please, Sonia, can you hear me?
Yes, Marco, I can.
Yes, I really enjoyed at least a part of the presentation that I could watch because I arrived a little bit late. So I would like to ask you if you could share the presentation with us, because unfortunately I wasn't able to make it in the beginning. So I would like to see it all through again. So can you share the presentation with us, please?
Sure. Okay, no problem.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
And also, we are planning to put this session on our YouTube channel. So if you wait, if you wait 2 or 3 days, we can see in CFA Society Portugal this session there.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Sonia, thank you very much.
Yeah, have a lovely evening, everyone.
You too, Sonia.
Bye.
We'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you to everyone.
Obrigado. Boa tarde.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for your participation, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.